Again, a psychiatrist who's examined Julian Assange has concluded that the WikiLeaks founder would be at a high risk of suicide if he was sent to the United States. Professor Michael Kopelman spoke at the extradition hearing in London on Tuesday and expressed concerns about Assange's mental health.
He's made various plans and undergone various preparations, such as confessed to the Catholic priest, who granted him absolution, began to draft farewell letters to family members and close friends. He's drawn up a will. I concluded the risk of suicide, if extradition became imminent or should actually happen, would be very high.
Meanwhile, more than 160 current and former world leaders, along with lawmakers and diplomats, have called for Julian Assange's release. They've signed an open letter to the British government. The WikiLeaks founder is currently in prison in the UK, awaiting a decision on whether he'll be extradited to the US to face espionage charges. A member of Lawyers for Assange says the case is being highly politicised.
The case of Julian Assange is very clear-cut. Morally, there is no doubt who is in the right and who is in the wrong. On the one hand, we have a journalist who has exposed incredible war crimes and torture and corruption. On the other hand, we have the embarrassed superpower that wants to prosecute him. It couldn't be more black and white than this. As legal experts, we can say unequivocally that what is going on is a political process.
Assange is accused of leaking a trove of secret US military and diplomatic documents. His extradition hearing had been delayed by the COVID pandemic. The proceedings have been repeatedly marked by protests outside the court building as well, with public figures and political activists coming to support him. Former MP George Galloway, the first rapper MIA, reacted to the developments.
I still feel hopeful. It was just nice seeing Julian. I wish I could tell him all the ways that, the world is changing and people's press freedom or just ability to be truthful or speak freely on the internet is actually way worse than it was a year ago. And, so much censorship is allowed.
The trial is back on again, but you used the best word that I've heard to describe it: trudging on. It's trudging on in complete silence. None of the British media are covering this story at all, even though it's the trial of the century, right in the heart of London, in some cases a few hundred yards away from the big media houses, but none of them attend. None of them are interested, even though for the journalists in those media houses, if Julian Assange goes down, so does journalism. And where he goes, they might one day be forced to follow. We know how the case is going. It's going extremely badly for the US government and the British government. The tragedy is that probably won't make any difference at all.
Right, live to London next then, and human rights activist Peter Tatchell. Peter, hi, welcome back to RT. According to the psychiatrist I referred to earlier on, Assange has been suffering from psychotic symptoms, including hallucinations while in solitary confinement. As far as you're aware, is Assange getting the help he needs, or at least a robust assessment?
Well, certainly the evidence is that he's not receiving adequate medical and psychiatric care. He has, as Professor Kopelman has indicated, for many months suffered from hallucinations, voices in his head, weight loss, depression, anxiety, and insomnia. These are all the signs and signals of someone deeply traumatized, suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, the idea that such a person should be extradited, given these grave health issues, is extraordinary and indeed unforgivable and contrary to basic human rights principles. I happen to know Professor Kopelman personally. He is a person of incredible scientific knowledge. He's held in very high esteem. I take his report very, very seriously. He says that Julian Assange would be a very high risk of suicide if he was extradited to the United States, given his current mental health and given the fact that he's likely to be put in solitary confinement, which would only exacerbate his already severe mental health symptoms.
And assessments like this, bleak as they are, what effect might that have on proceedings at the Old Bailey then? Because Mr. Assange isn't just speaking for himself, of course. He's got lawyers, he's got health teams, he's got plenty of people speaking on his behalf in all this. But does his health have any impact on what's going to happen at the Central Criminal Court?
Well, certainly in theory and principle, a person facing extradition should have their mental health and physical health taken into consideration. There have been a number of cases in recent years where people who have also been up for extradition to the United States have had their extradition blocked by the British courts on the grounds that the mental trauma and risk to their mental health and even the potentiality of suicide would be too grave to justify extradition. So there is a precedent in the British courts for blocking extradition on the grounds of a person's severe ill health. I'm hoping that this is a decision that the British court will take in Julian Assange's case, but I do know there is an incredible determination on the part of the British government in alliance with the US government to get Assange to the US regardless. And my fear is that his health issues, his health concerns, his health dangers will be overridden for the sake of that political objective.
Those are the two things, aren't they, about whether he's going to, whether the court has the legal obligation, as you say, about extraditing someone with severe health issues, or whether there is that one-way street, of course, when it comes to US extraditions. Just quickly then, how do you see this panning out? Do you think the court, very quickly, do you think the court will listen to this?
Well, there is always hope. The judge in the case has not been sympathetic to Assange. She's taken quite a number of negative rulings against him. So I'm not hopeful, but on the other hand, there is a glimmer of hope. So we will have to wait and see. But this case is being dragged out and out and out, and we really need a conclusion in favor of Julian Assange not being extradited to the United States. All he did was publish the truth. He exposed US war crimes and corruption. He's a hero, not a criminal.
Thank you for now, Peter Tatchell in London. I really appreciate your time again. Thanks for joining us on RT.